You know, there is a company out there whose name you've probably heard, but whose real power is, well, it's almost invisible. It's a name that gets whispered in the horrors of finance, in government, shaping our world in ways you probably don't even see. That name? It's BlackRock. And here's the thing that's kind of wild when you think about it. You've never ever voted for them. Chances are you've never even met anyone who works there. They don't make the phone that's in your pocket right now. And they don't drill for the oil that powers your car. Nope, their business is something way more fundamental. And yet, they are so deeply tangled up in the companies that do all of those things. I mean, they manage more money than the entire economies of most countries. So, what in the world is actually going on here? All right, let's pull back the curtain and really try to understand what BlackRock is and where this immense kind of quiet power really comes from. So yeah, that's the big question, right? Are they some kind of shadowy group pulling the strings? A super secret hedge fund for the mega rich? The truth? Well, it's actually a lot simpler, but also way more profound. Okay, so first things first, let's get rid of some misconceptions. BlackRock is not a hedge fund making these wild, risky bets. And it's not a private equity firm buying and selling companies. Forget all that. At its very core, BlackRock is the world's largest asset manager, period. So, what's an asset manager? It's actually pretty simple. They take other people's money, and we are talking about a lot of other people's money, and their job is to invest it, manage it, and help it grow. The key thing to remember is they're custodians. They're not the owners.
And whose money are we talking about? Well, it's the money from the pension funds that are going to pay for our parents and our own retirements. It's money from governments, from the insurance companies we count on, from huge universities, and yeah, even from regular, everyday investors like you and me.
Okay, but managing money is one thing. Managing nearly $10 trillion, that is something else entirely. How on earth did they get that big? You know, their origin story isn't some crazy tale of ruthless ambition. It's actually kind of nerdy. They started back in 1988, and their whole big idea was just to understand financial risk better than anybody else, especially after the bond markets kind of fell apart in the 80s. It was all about data and systems, not making splashy headlines. But the thing that really lit the rocket fuel under them, the thing that sent them into the stratosphere, was one single massive trend: the explosion of passive investing. And this changed absolutely everything. Think about it like this. Instead of trying to be a genius and find that one needle in the haystack, that one winning stock, passive investing basically says, hey, why don't we just own a tiny piece of the entire haystack? Through things like index funds, you're not betting on one company, you're betting on the whole market. And as the market grew, money just poured into these funds, and a massive chunk of that money flowed right through BlackRock. And so what happens when you're managing trillions of dollars using this passive strategy? Well, a totally new kind of power starts to show up. It's a power that's not based on being aggressive, but on just sheer, unavoidable size. I mean, if your whole game is to own the entire market, then surprise, you end up owning a piece of almost every major public company on the planet. You become one of the biggest shareholders everywhere. Not like a king giving orders, but more like a silent, constant presence in the boardroom. And the scale of this is just, it's mind-blowing. I mean, pick any major sector you can think of: tech, banking, energy, healthcare, you name it. If you look at who the top shareholders are, you are going to find BlackRock's name right near the top of that list, representing the combined investments of millions and millions of people. But holding shares is only half the story. Their real secret weapon, the thing that gives them this incredible bird's eye view of everything, actually goes back to their nerdy origins in risk management. They built something extraordinary. It's a system called Aladdin. And you can almost think of it like the financial world's central nervous system. It monitors trillions and trillions of dollars in assets. It stress tests the markets for potential disasters. And it gives a level of insight that nobody else really has. And it's so good that other banks, major institutions, and even governments pay to use it. And that kind of expertise, that becomes incredibly powerful. You know, back in the 2008 financial crisis, when the world was basically falling apart and nobody had a clue what all these toxic assets were actually worth, who do you think the US government called for help? Yep, they called BlackRock. Because when chaos hits, the people who actually understand the system, they become the authority. So all of this, the scale, the data, the expertise. It all adds up to a really new, kind of 21st century form of power. It's not about ruling from a throne. It's about being woven into the very fabric of the system itself. A perfect example is the whole debate around ESG. That's environmental, social, and governance standards. When BlackRock, as a top shareholder, even suggests that companies should pay attention to this stuff, well, companies tend to listen. And it brings up this really fascinating question. Are they pushing their own values onto companies, or are they just reflecting what the millions of investors they represent are now demanding? The answer is, it's complicated. Which, of course, brings us all the way back to that giant, looming question that we started with. Do they actually control the world? And this, right here, is probably the most important thing to understand. BlackRock doesn't need to give orders. They don't need some secret plan for world domination. Their power comes from something much simpler. They are the infrastructure. They're like the financial plumbing that global money flows through. See, they don't run the governments, and they don't run the companies. They exist in that weird, fuzzy space between all of them. They're the quiet link connecting your pension to a corporation and connecting governments to the financial markets. And maybe the great secret of our modern world is that sometimes that space in between, that's where the real power lives.